and welcome everyone to another episode of 50 to 70 Meaningful Conversations Between Men. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Peter Callan. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing great, Darius. It's good to be here with you, with our audience as well. And I just want to preface today's episode, as I wish we would do more often. This is a conversation between men that we highlight, but it's also, we're learning, having an impact on women who have to interact with men.
And interact, deal with, tolerate.
And so we also want to make sure we welcome in our audience the women who are listening to the podcast. And you're welcome.
Or we're sorry. I'm not sure which way to go. So those of you who have been following with us, we've covered a number of different topics, and today's is going to be on diet and nutrition. This is a subject that Peter and I, big preface, neither Peter or I are nutritionalists or medical doctors, but this is a subject of really intense importance, I guess I would describe it, to both of us, given some of the realizations we've had.
Yes. And both of us as lifelong learners have learned from our mistakes, made adjustments, and continue to make adjustments with the objective of maintaining a high level of health and well-being and vitality, especially as we age, as we've coined a number of times, in our attempts to age differently.
Yeah,
perhaps.
And I recognize that for many members of our audience, food might be a triggering event because a lot of people have complex relationships with food and use food for other things other than nutrition. And we'll touch on that as well as we go through this.
Yeah, which brings me to, the audience can't see this, but I have a t-shirt on. You'll see it in the video. It says, eat good, feel good. I think part of our conversation today is going to be, what do we mean by good? Is it good as in pleasurable and satisfying and that's it? Or do we mean good as in something that is more appropriate for your overall health and well-being? Or is it a balance?
Yeah. So we've got 3 questions we're going to cover during the course of this episode. 1 is when to eat. 2 is what to eat. And 3 along that is why you're choosing to eat.
Yes.
But before we get into those, my history of food is pretty simple. When I was growing up, if you put it in front of me, I'd eat it. I considered food fuel for the engine. Did I read a label? No. Did I try to eat healthy? Yeah, I tried to eat healthy, but was I really eating healthy? Probably not, with the abundance of processed foods. And I traveled a lot for work, which meant I ate out constantly. And you have no idea what is actually going into your body when you're eating out. And it's only in the last 3 years where I've become more mindful and more conscious and more prioritizing, I guess is the word, what I'm going to eat, when I'm going to eat, to make sure that my body's getting the fuel it needs.
Yeah. Yeah. I was similar as a child, as a child or even all the way up to a young adult. You basically follow whatever your parents' leads are, whatever their customs, their family habits have been. As a young adult, though, I started to ask questions, and ask and read. And, at that time, there was a kind of revolution happening in food as people started to challenge whether the manufacture and the industrial complex of food processing was healthy for individuals. And as well as with animals as well. That was another consideration that I won't just overlook. But as a young adult, I started looking into it. I started looking to see if there was a benefit to things like eating less red meat, eating less processed foods, like eating more vegetables and fruit, which I liked it as a young adult and was on our table quite often or around quite often. So that was kind of natural, but it may not be a natural for most people or many people in the audience. And so the question is, what happens now when you're an adult? Maybe we should talk about that.
The ability to make choices. So the first choice is when to eat. And I was growing up, conditioned, got the belief you need to eat breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And then I started reading about intermittent fasting and the benefits of not eating all the time and allowing the body to reset and not expend energy digesting food. And obviously, for those not familiar with the concept, intermittent fasting, every day you don't eat for 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 hours, and then you eat in a smaller window of time. Have you tried? Do you intermittent fast?
It's so ironic. I first want to mention that I grew up with a number of cultural influences.
Okay.
And so I grew up in a Latin household. My mother's Cuban. Um, and so the habits weren't always to have breakfasts, except for maybe on the weekend. Um, as a child, yes. But adults, as I became a young adult, was around other adults. As I grew up and was influenced, my father being in the military, by cultures, Japanese, Korean, German, that some of my friends, their mothers were, there were all kinds of influences that some of which I adapted, some of which I admired, some of which I ignored. So I have, through my life, been kind of ebbed and flowed with breakfast. Now, as an adult, I don't. And I don't really feel a need or a desire to eat breakfast, except for when I'm with you and you're eating breakfast. But to answer your question about intermittent fasting, almost by default, I've become an intermittent faster. I tend to eat late. Now I'm eating earlier as I've aged and recognized eating late is not good for my body, not healthy. And so I eat a little earlier, and I still don't have a desire to eat breakfast. And my own metabolism, I don't feel hunger until like the afternoon. So I've come to eat one big meal a day. That's how I've, and unconsciously and now consciously, find myself intermittently fasting. I won't eat anything of substance until about 4 o'clock, after having eaten a meal, maybe at 7 the evening before, say 9. And I find that my energy levels are high. I'm not spending a lot of time with digestion, and that's one of the things. The food that I eat, I have to be much more conscious that it's feeding my body appropriately, the nutrition. And I've figured that out, and the way I figure it out is by being with my body, paying attention. We've covered this in a number of episodes, being mindful, what's going on with my own body. And so having done that for a number of decades now, some things I've learned, some things I've unlearned, some things are habits that I still haven't rid myself of. Some things ebb and flow. Sometimes I come back to doing things in the way I used to, and then sometimes I realize that's not in my best interest. That's not best for this being that I call home.
Yeah, so if I think about it, I've got some research in front of me on the benefits of intermittent fasting, which you're personifying. Improved cognitive performance, weight loss, no change in physical performance. In other words, it doesn't negatively impact athletes that are out there. Prevention of some cancers, cardioprotective, and even helped reduce the need for insulin in some patients with type 2 diabetes. So essentially what's happening is we're allowing the body, rather than focusing energy on digesting, to clean up and to heal itself along the way.
Yeah.
Such a powerful tool. Now, it's not easy. If my metabolism is very different than yours, I wake up hungry. I choose not to eat until 10 or 11. Then I'll have a nice solid breakfast. And then around 4 o'clock, I'm just hungry. I need to eat and eat and eat and eat. And I'll try and stop, similar to you, by around 6 o'clock at night, because I want to have that 4 hours before going to sleep so that I'm not digesting my food while I'm sleeping. That's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're much better at that than I am. I have to confess to you and the audience, I'm still working on that one.
Have you ever tried an extended fast?
Yes.
And your experience?
It's such a detoxifying, cleansing experience, and it reaches not only into the metabolism in the body, it's not into the physical aspects of your being, but your mind as well. And, we throughout our episodes keep talking about the relationship of emotions
Mhm.
to your being. It also is a cleansing of the emotional weights that perhaps you've been carrying because you're focused on just um, being. You're not distracted by processing food or thinking about food or having an emotional tie to the food you eat, because we do.
Mhm.
All of that during the periods of fasting just kind of gets neutral.
How long do you go for?
I've done as long as a week.
Hmm.
Typically, I try to do 3 days at the beginning of the year of fasting, just water. Some people, and I've done fruit juice for 7 days. There's kind of different ways you can fast. The one that I mentioned, just water,
Mhm.
no solid foods, including no soups either.
No soups.
Um, but some people do fruit juice, which is water diluted with fruit juice. So there's a couple of different ways to approach it. You could also, and I can suggest this to somebody who's trying it for the first time, you could also do it gradually. So you kind of wean off to, maybe a big meal is what you have once a day, or maybe you have 2 or 3
Mhm.
meals. Instead, you do one meal. The next day, you half a meal. The next day, you do no meal. So there's a couple of ways that I suggest you could approach fasting.
Yeah, I've done 3-day juice fast, 1 day water. I don't have a spiritual experience. I just get lethargic and tired and don't want to do very much for those days.
All 3 days?
No, day 3.
Okay, there's different theories on that. I'll share with you my experience and the experience of others have shared with me. It takes 3 days to get to where you breach.
The cleansing. Yeah,
Yes.
would make sense. So when we break the fast and when we are eating, what do you usually eat, Peter?
I eat as clean as I possibly can. And when I say clean, I mean foods that are not processed, uh, vegetables, fruits, um, lean protein. I don't eat chicken though. And I only started eating fish again in large part because I felt my body wasn't getting enough omega. I mean, that may sound strange,
It makes sense to me.
but in this practice of mindfulness, having a sense, an awareness, the awareness, and I like to quote awareness in this way: when you realize that everything you do makes a difference,
Hmm.
you begin to pay impeccable attention. That's a quote from Sarah Borenstein. And so I've learned to pay impeccable attention to what's going on with my body and what happens when I eat certain foods. And this is my invitation to the audience. Just make a note of, well, I'll give you the easiest one. When you go on a drinking binge, that's a food.
Hmm.
Let's say it's wine. Try to notice how you feel the next day. Or if you go drinking hard alcohol, how do you feel? So isn't your body kind of telling you how it felt about what you just ingested? It does that with every food that you intake. So if you're paying attention impeccably, then you start to identify what's good, what's not so good for your body.
You mentioned processed foods. What's a processed food or a processed food?
Usually foods that are enhanced with preservatives or enhanced with flavors that aren't natural to the food that you're eating. And been some it's grown as part of the food industrial complex as a way of selling this commodity that we call food, which should be more than just a commodity for us. It should be life sustaining,
Hmm.
health building,
Life enhancing.
life enhancing.
Yeah.
And so again, this different mindset of paying attention
Yeah, the processed foods is a big no-no for me. That's one of the things that I have steered away from. And as you become mindful and you actually start to read labels, things that you thought were good for you. So roasted almonds. I love roasted almonds until I looked at the label and they're roasted in canola oil,
Mm,
which is an obviously an unhealthy fat. So now I need to get my own almonds and dry roast them.
yes.
And you talked about the artificial chemicals that are added. They'll say natural flavors on a lot of labels. Natural flavors aren't actually the natural flavors. They're basically chemicals designed to simulate that flavor.
Yes.
Right, so it's not like if you're getting a lemon drink with natural flavors, they got a little bit of lemon juice in there. No, they have the lemon chemical in there. And the more you learn the dyes,
On the dyes.
aspartame, all of these artificial sweeteners, that's just terrible for
Haven't
you.
a lot of the dyes been linked to cancer?
Absolutely. And that's why I remember reading a study, the dyes get pulled and new dyes that do the same thing get put on the market that haven't shown the links to
Mhm.
cancer yet. So
Yeah.
processed food, just, I mean, it's everything. If it comes in a box, if it comes in a bag. And the other thing I've noticed about them, not only do they taste different, they're addictive. You want more.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And have you noticed where that's most prevalent?
United States.
Well, which type of food establishments?
Which type of food establishments? Fast food establishments.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where foods are enhanced so that you just get addicted to the flavors and you want to go back and buy some more.
Hmm.
And it's priced right. And you don't have to look to see, well, is it healthy for me or not?
Yeah. Well, the answer, I think we all can tell. The answer is no.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked a lot about processed foods and how bad processed foods are for you. Now let's talk about what we should be eating. You mentioned eating clean, and that has a lot of different connotations. Over the course of my life, I've been a vegetarian. I've been a pescatarian, where I've been vegan except for fish. I tried, what was it? High protein diet. Was that called Atkins? I can't remember what it was called. I tried that. And what I found is that for my body, it's clean as defined by fruits, vegetables, nuts, lean proteins, healthy fats. And by healthy fats, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, nuts, not the kind of stuff that you get at the movie theater and the popcorn, which, speaking of addictive, that's a textbook example of addictive. But what is eating clean in your mind?
That's, again, so customized to the, our audience,
Mm-hmm.
some of whom may have intolerances to certain foods and have more tolerance for others. In general, we've kind of learned to give our bodies protein and limited amount of carbs and lots of fruits and vegetables. So in 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 their most natural state is what I would define as clean.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to throw a curveball at you today.
Okay.
I'm going to define diet and eating clean as foods that keep you from being sick,
Mm-hmm.
from taking on dis-ease in the body or disease. I would invite you and the audience, and this is kind of an approach I've taken. I'm trying to eat in a way where I maintain my physiology, my immune system, and I don't get sick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm trying to pay attention to. I haven't had a cold in decades, except for right after my COVID shots.
I would say I would build on your thesis, the curveball, and say that eating clean and what everybody's body needs is different. And you need to listen to what your body is telling you and respond accordingly. In other words, if you are having difficulty losing weight, well, the body is telling you you either need to move, go back to listen to our
By
podcast,
some
move it or
movement.
lose it, reduce your calories, or get rid of the processed garbage that's going in. I mean, for me, there's foods that I avoid. Alcohol. If I have one drink, I have an allergic reaction.
Mm.
So if I'm going to have one, I'm going to have seven. I'm going to have a good old allergic reaction followed by a wonderful hangover the next day. And by allergic reaction, I mean blotched skin, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, sweating, heart racing, nauseated.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah, that's why I don't drink anymore. It's a gift. Processed sugar, poison. I mean, just so bad for you when it comes to prematurely aging the cells and aging the body. Personally, I avoid dairy because I've found that it puffs me up, which results in some kind of inflammation going on.
Yeah.
There's something there that doesn't respond well to my
Most people
physiology.
are not, they have an intolerance to lactose
Yeah.
in dairy. I don't consume dairy.
Yeah. And then unhealthy fats, like any kind of seed oil, I tend to avoid. Tastes great, but I just know for long-term aging differently.
Yeah. And, it's, we're saying these things, and I would like the audience to know that I am challenged in keeping alignment to eating healthy, even with the objective of eating so that I don't
Mm-hmm.
incur illness. I still fall back on bad old habits. You mentioned processed food, processed sugar. My children tease me all the time that I'm a sugar addict because I love sweets. I'm much better than I used to be, but it's still so indelibly imprinted in my psyche and in my habits that I revert back every now and then,
Well,
even with what I know.
well, it's interesting because now we're getting to the last topic we need to cover here, which is why people eat. Now, if you are like younger us's, you eat because you're hungry. You're trying to build mass. You're trying to get ready for whatever it is you're doing. But as you get older, what I've seen is that the relationship people have with their food becomes far more complex. And I think you're
It's
touching on
incredibly
that.
complex.
Yeah. So why do people eat, Peter?
I think I feel that the answer lies very much in how our psyches have been imprinted, conditioned, habituated over time. And in general, I, as I said, with sweets, desserts, look for a pleasurable experience. And so we're kind of addicted to comfort and pleasure. And food is can be one of those most immediately satisfying experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Good food, good tasting food, based on what you learned, what you were conditioned to believe or experience as, this is so pleasant. And so oftentimes I think that's why we eat. We eat for pleasure and for comfort. But sometimes the comfort we're seeking isn't just physiological. Sometimes it's emotional.
Yeah. And then I'm bored watching TV. Huh. Maybe I'll just go get something to snack on. I'm not feeling good, to your point. I'm depressed.
Mm.
I want some ice cream because I'm depressed,
Yes.
right? Eating to get that comfort. Or the other one is stressed. I'm stressed out. I'm really focused on this. I need to eat. But in all of those examples that we're talking about, food is being used as a crutch.
Yeah.
It's not being used for nutrition. It's being used as a crutch because if you think about the choices that you make when you're in that state, it's typically not an apple, some celery, some carrots. It's cookies, crackers, cheese, potato chips, cake. It's things that are
Super pleasant.
super pleasant for the moment, but then not afterwards.
No, I didn't say super healthy.
No, really. And if you start paying attention to your body, you can feel the effects sometimes within seconds, sometimes within hours, sometimes the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't have to say much about the longer term effects, do we?
No.
Or maybe we should.
we can touch on the longer term effects, but you can Google cancer rates, obesity rates, diabetes rates, I mean, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. The rates, the prevalence of all of these are going up in this country.
Yes.
And we're spending money trying to get a pill to cure it, whereas we're not looking at the source of the problem, which is we are what we eat. So do you want to be Cheetos or do you want to be an organic apple?
Yeah.
Do you want to be, ring pops or whatever kind of sweet stuff is out there? Or do you want to be grass-fed beef that you have once a week or once every, however often you need it, that builds the body the right way?
Yes. Yeah. And prevents decay or retards decay and slows down illnesses.
Yeah.
Slows down the degeneration that happens with aging, which is, one of the major themes we have here at Age Differently and on this podcast. So food is just such a critical aspect of being.
It is. We can't live without it. The other thing I'll comment on is sometimes when I'm hungry, I'm not hungry. I'm actually thirsty.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
So I will go and have a drink of water, especially late in the day, because I'll drink a lot of water in the morning, as you know, and then I taper it off as the day goes on. But late in the day, if I drink that big cup of water,
You're not hungry?
my skin goes, all right, we get a little confused. Then I get hungry half an hour later, but it seems like there was thirst getting in the way. So I would posit there's a segment of the population that if you're hungry, go have a drink of water, wait 30 minutes, see how you feel.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the conclusion of our episode, and we're up to the call to action, my friend. And I think the call to action here is to be mindful and aware of what you're eating. Look at processed foods. Go read the label.
Yes, please.
If you don't understand something, don't eat it. But be mindful, be aware of what you're eating, when you're eating. And for bonus points, start to figure out what's making you feel good the next day, giving you that vitality, that energy, versus which foods are making you feel hungover, sluggish, malaised the next day.
Okay, I'll throw a mindful curve in there.
Please.
Why you're feeling the way you're feeling while you're eating.
Exactly. That's the when you're eating, why you're eating, what's going on in your psyche that's driving you.
Yeah.
So we usually close most of our episodes with a poem or a quote. So Peter, I think you've got one today.
I do, and I have to read it. And it relates much more to this element of being that I was referring to, and how food integrates with just being. Your being from a physical, mental, emotional, energetic. We talked about this in several podcasts, but here we're talking about it in reference to diet and nutrition and eating. Have you ever had the experience of stopping so completely, of being in your body so completely, of being in your life so completely, that what you knew and what you didn't know, that what had been and what was yet to come, and the way things are right now, they no longer held even the slightest hint of anxiety or discord. It would be a moment of complete presence. Beyond striving and beyond mere acceptance. Beyond the desire to escape or fix anything or plunge ahead. It's just a moment of pure being, no longer in time, a moment of pure seeing, pure feeling, a moment in your life in which it simply is. And that isness grabs you by all of your senses, all of your memories, all of your conditioning by your very genes, by your loves. And that isness of being welcomes you home.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. This will be up on agedifferently.com. Please head over. Leave us your feedback. Leave us your comments. We'd love to know what you thought of the episode. And until next time, Peter.
Yes. Until next time, Darius, and thanks to the audience. And hopefully we've impacted one of you, if not more. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.